You're listening to Owning the Buy Box, an IP Secure podcast. This is the podcast for agencies, brands, and aggregators who want to master Amazon, push out unauthorized competition, and take their business to the next level. You're about to hear a conversation that'll help you maximize your growth on Amazon by owning the Buy Box. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, Dave Cooper here, CEO and founder of IP Secure and your host for Owning the Buy Box. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're very lucky to have Jessica Wright. Jessica is the Amazon brand strategist, also known as Amazon Guru, I think internally. I've heard that term flying around with Seller Labs. And Seller Labs provides a variety of services to brands and to sellers on various marketplaces. She's really experienced on brand protection and protecting your channel. And so we're happy to have her. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. You know, our show is focused really, on protecting your channel, controlling the channel. And we use the term brand protection a lot as sort of a catch-all term for that. But I think there's a bunch of things happening, sort of under that specific term. As someone who's sort of living in this ecosystem on a day-to-day basis and running being part of a successful agency like Seller Labs, I mean, how important is brand protection just generally to you, to your business? Is it something that is kind of front and center for you guys on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we work with a variety of Amazon sellers, but we do best with those that are brands. And, in working with those brands, it's really essential that they have protected the channel and that they are doing everything they can and taking advantage of all the tools that Amazon has for protecting their brand, for us to be able to do, our job well for them. So it's super, super essential to us as a business as it is to the brands as sellers.
Part of what we think great agencies and providers and folks that are, helping others to be successful on Amazon, we think part of it is weaving in sort of best practices, right? As it's associated to keeping Amazon clean. I know that you have a history of working with a variety of different brands. Would you say that it's changed a lot over the years, like compared to when you first started out to today? And I know you've worked with big brands and little brands. So any insight from you just generally, like, has it gotten better in terms of unauthorized sellers? Is it harder today? Just generally, how do you feel about it?
I think that it's gotten better. I know that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily agree, but I've been doing this probably about 15 years now. So looking at things over that 15-year landscape is a lot different than, I think if people are measuring it over the last 5 or 6 years, we've come such a long way. Amazon really does recognize brands now and recognize the importance of protecting those brands. So I think they've introduced so many more tools and they've made it so much easier through things like, transparency, Project Zero, and even just the enhancements they've made to brand registry itself for a brand to protect itself. I know more recently we've dealt with a big influx of, foreign manufacturers coming in and selling directly and kind of cutting out a lot of white label brands that way. And there have been some other things that have disrupted the playing field. But I still think, compared to when I started working with Amazon 15 years ago, it has come a very long way and things are definitely much better now than they were.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they've invested, right, a significant amount of money and resources. I think we could argue, or some would argue, maybe it's not enough, or I think in some cases people have this feeling like Amazon isn't doing enough. But the reality is when you look sort of underneath the covers at the quantity of money and people and resources and programs, it's certainly light years ahead of any other platform globally. I mean, Alibaba does spend a lot and is very public in their efforts to keep the platform clean, at least. But still, it's minuscule, right, compared to what what Amazon's deployed. And that's a great point. I think brands operating on Amazon forget that their agencies and their partners are really the tip of the spear in terms of your success on that platform, and you're excellent resources for how to deal with channel conflict or counterfeits or unauthorized product. You mentioned Amazon's tools. I mean, how important is it that you guys are experts in those tools, do you think?
So I think it's super important for some, Seller Labs was founded as a technology company, and we were software first, and now we have our services division. And so I think as we've grown and as we've added more of these, full service, we do now have full marketplace or full channel management. So as we expand our services, it becomes more and more important every day that we truly understand the whole landscape of Amazon. I think in a lot of cases, we do it better than, a lot of employees at Amazon, because they are so siloed in knowing I work for brand registry or I work for, seller support or whatever it is. So they only know what's exactly in their lane. And if there's a crossover, they can't help you. All they can do is maybe escalate it or tell you they're forwarding it to the concerned department or whatever it may be, but you get stuck a lot. And so having us as, a brand partner in their business and being able to come to us and saying this strange thing is happening, and for us to know some of those obscure details or how different programs work together and what might be causing an error in one because of something you've done somewhere else on the platform. I think that's, really, really key to being a good brand partner in the Amazon landscape.
I couldn't agree with you more. The complexity of Amazon's ecosystem means you need experts. It's just that simple. As a brand owner or manufacturer or, someone working on that side of it, you just don't have the resources and the time. I mean, it's too much. And I think you had mentioned once to me before that Seller Labs was started by sellers. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. That's where it all came from. Our founder and CEO had a need for generating more feedback and more quickly. And that's where Seller Labs grew out of his creation of Feedback Genius, which was a feedback tool, which is now part of our suite of software called Pro. But yeah, that's exactly where it came from. And that's, I think, why we're so good at what we do, is because we're not just an agency. We're not just people who are coming in to help you with your advertising. We're a bunch of people who have varied backgrounds in manufacturing and selling on Amazon and being brand owners. So we understand really what's going on from start to finish and can be beneficial to our clients in that way.
I could see that experience being really, really valuable. I think my history comes from kind of the legal IP world. And one of the challenges there is everything is sort of looked at through the lens of IP and mitigating risk. And everyone on that side of the world knows brand registry really well, right? And if they don't, they're working on getting to know it really well. But they don't really think a lot about the implications on revenue and on commerce activity. And I think for companies like Seller Labs and successful agencies in the space, you have to think about the IP side of it, because that is one avenue, right, to kind of remedy some of these problems. But there are other avenues too. And there are other problems outside of just IP that really cause a lot of problems. And you mentioned it, right? Like, I'm thinking, there's things associated with Seller Central, Vendor Central, Brand Registry. There's all these systems and policies. And when you have third-party sellers invading your buy box, IP may not be the lever, right, that's appropriate or even available to you.
It's not, yeah, in a lot of cases, right? Because if they bought the product through a legal means and it's not truly a counterfeit or a knockoff product, they've bought it legally, they have that legal right to resell it. And Amazon recognizes that, so they're not just going to shut down those third-party sellers because of that. So you've really got to secure your supply chain and make sure you don't have any holes where things are getting out where you wouldn't expect them. And if you're working, with, say, big box sellers, and making sure they don't discount your product and give it away to people who then go in and buy it and resell it on Amazon, and make sure you have a process in place with them in your terms and agreements with them to make sure that the way that they move those products is at full price, or they send them back to you, or there's some other clause there to make sure that they don't get in the hands of those resellers. But once they do, then what do you do? Then there are other tools within Amazon, or there are other things you need to do as a brand to make sure that you're protected, even if you can't get rid of those sellers, to make sure they're not degrading the price or hurting the, image of your brand and that sort of thing.
You may not be able to remove them, but you can influence their behavior. Maybe. I mean, certainly there are things like if you're not selling, for less on your website, then they're not incentivized to drop the price on Amazon. That kind of thing. There's not always a way to 100% alleviate it, but there are some little things you can do to try and stay ahead of it. But it does start with like cleaning up your own backyard, so to speak, right? Like have good agreements in place. Right. Know who's in your supply chain and who you sell product to. Right. All those best practices approaches to the management of your supply chain make it easier for you, it sounds like, to do things about problems when they arise on Amazon.
Even within the tools within Amazon, I think this past year, they automatically opted all sellers into a liquidations program. And so you do still have some choices within your own catalog of what you want to put into that program or not. But if you don't realize the implications of being in that liquidation program, where if you have excess goods, you can allow Amazon to liquidate, sell your product for pennies on the dollar, and you let those products get into hands of resellers who can then go sell it wherever they want, including on the Amazon platform. You may not realize, because Amazon's made this tool available to you, you think it's a great tool to use on the Amazon platform because obviously they've made it available and there's not going to be any risk involved with it. But there's a lot of risk involved with it, and you just need to know how to use things.
So again, the complexity and then the quantity of programs and tools. And I talk to brand owners all the time, both relative to the show and to my day job. And I get this question a lot. I'm curious what you think about it. And I'll get a call from a big distributor in the Northwest it's basically HVAC equipment, like repair stuff for air conditioners. And there's two huge companies apparently in this space. And the guy calls me up and he says, my competitor is creating offers on my listings. And I said, well, that's very common. I don't okay. And he said, but I can't do that on his listings. It won't let me. What's that about? And I think his competitor's listings are gated. And he was like, well, how do I get my listings gated? And I don't know the answer to that. So not that I'm asking you for an answer, because I don't know that there is one. It's a secret answer. Mm-hmm. But it's another example of the kind of thing where, the sellers are sort of left in the dark. And it's not that I think Amazon intentionally hides stuff. It's just the quantity of stuff is just overwhelming, right? So yeah, ripple effects are a big one. We see that a lot. Pricing pressure that gets created from either, on Amazon itself, or even, as you said, externally, because they are monitoring, the pricing of your products everywhere probably possible, which is sort of crazy.
I've even heard offline. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard actual shelf scraping. I'm sure it's, specific brands, probably the higher end brands, but.
Yeah, I would think that's difficult to scale, but I don't put anything past them. You're right. I mean, if they want to do it, they're going to do it. They'll find a way, I think. So it's pretty interesting stuff. But again, it's another example of why all of the elements of your operation on Amazon are impacted if you have, trespassers in your buy box. It'll drag your price down. It'll create all sorts of additional problems. Back to the Amazon programs, though, because I'm a big advocate that people should be proactive with this. and that means, I think clearly joining brand registry is a key component and something I know you're an expert in. What if you acquire a new customer and I say I'm not a brand registry member? Would you help me become a member? Help me clean up my channel? I mean, is that element part of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a couple of different ways to help manage that for them. But yeah, it's absolutely something we suggest. If someone comes to us and they are a brand owner and they have the trademarks and they have everything in place that they need to, or in a lot of cases, even if they don't, we definitely suggest to them and make it clear to them that their success on Amazon is in some ways going to be dependent upon having that brand registry in place and protecting their brand. So we, out of the gate, will let them know that they're going to be more successful and we're going to be more successful in promoting them if they do, complete the brand registry. But then we have, either through our full channel management offering or through consulting hours, we have the ability to also actually, do that work for them to get them enrolled and then opt them into additional programs as well.
Yeah, it's surprising the number of brands that I talk to that are still discovering all these tools and sort of trying to figure it out. And I think what a lot of them do initially is they just go to their law firm or something and they say, because it, IP, so it feels normal and natural to go to your law firm. But as I said, the reality is your agency is really the ones on the front line. And, it's where we think people should start if they need to get educated on how to get in these programs, how to protect the channel, and some of the best practices that go along with that. Are there other programs? Like, do I have to be a brand registry member if I want to participate in other programs that Amazon has?
So many of the other programs, the barrier to entry is brand registry. So just to be able to participate in Amazon Vine, where, the program that allows you to get reviews from trusted reviewers, it's Amazon's only program that you can actually solicit reviews. That requires brand registry. Things like the newer, it's been around a couple of years now, customer engagement tool, or, even being able to do certain types of ads on Amazon all require you to be a registered brand. So it opens up just this huge suite of other options for you on Amazon and many more tools to be able to both promote and protect your brand. Yeah,
I know transparency is a big one. And it's just, I've heard it's costly for some brands, if they're not, if track and trace and serialization and all that stuff is new to them or not something they've done before. I was told it's expensive, and that may be part of the concern about joining transparency.
Yeah, it can be. One thing that I think everyone should know right now is that through the end of this year, if you enroll in transparency and then get your brand protected, so there's a couple steps to do that. So you can't just enroll today and take advantage of this, but you have to enroll and then get your brand protected. Transparency is making 20,000 serialization codes, 20,000 of their codes available to sellers for free per ASIN on Amazon. So that's one of those fees that is no longer going to be a burden to the seller. Now, they still have to be able to print their labels and they still have to be able to pay for the label to place those labels on the individual selling units. But just being able to get a break on not having to pay for those, for a lot of brands, that's years and years worth of labels.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, 20,000 per ASIN, not across your whole brand, but 20,000 per ASIN that's available.
Per ASIN. So if I sell 300 ASINs,
whatever,
if I have
20,000 times 300 is.
Wow. So that's huge value.
It is. And, I guess it's not heavily publicized because I don't speak to a lot of people who know that that's available. So I do like to take the opportunity to say it whenever I can, because transparency is a great tool, and to be able to save money on something that can, effectively in a lot of ways. But yeah, to be able to get, save a little bit of money on something that can help you long term to protect your brand Amazon doesn't give you many things for free.
Right. That's right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I love that. I was not aware of that. So that's awesome information. Thanks for sharing. You may get an email or two later on from someone who views the show and says, "Hey, how do I take advantage of that?" So be careful, but nonetheless,
careful dropping those tips.
Yeah, but look, that's great, and the listeners appreciate it. That's a big, I think, piece of information that at least I know I wasn't aware of, and super helpful because again, like I said, the cost was always the concern I heard from the brand, especially the smaller brands. And it sounds like Amazon heard that too and decided, well, we'll mitigate that objection pretty easily. So that's really cool. I'm wondering if you have any feedback. If I was starting a new brand, or let's say I acquired a brand, but I'm really launching on Amazon, and I'm new. Are there any suggestions that you would have for me, maybe like a checklist or steps that I might want to take to make sure that I'm setting myself up right so that I can defend my channel later and I'm not going to get crushed, by bad guys?
I think that it changes from time to time because there's so many new things coming out and so many different things available on Amazon. But specifically speaking of the Amazon channel, I think, brand registry is the first big one. First set your Seller Central up properly. Make sure that everything tracks back to you and your company and not some other entity where you could end up with a conflict down the line and have your Seller Central shut down. So that's,
Should brands have completely separate accounts associated with brand registry and Seller Central?
I don't really think that's necessary. I know a lot of people do it that way. It may just be like the old school Amazon in me where you were not allowed to have separate Seller Central accounts. Didn't matter how many brands, that was just not allowed. Now it's allowed. And so I think for a lot of brands that is helpful for their accounting purposes and that sort of thing. But I don't necessarily think it has to be separate. It's probably helpful, and we're probably going the direction where eventually that will be necessary or recommended, just to make sure that you don't have anything that, Amazon can ever come and say, well, that you're not this brand, so your protection, revoked.
For the most part, if you're actively selling on an ASIN, and you wanted to initiate an IP violation against another seller attached to the same ASIN, that Amazon really doesn't like that. Right. They don't want sellers to weaponize IP enforcement as a way to eliminate what they view as completely authorized competition. But I guess what you're saying is that line used to be like really very, very thick and significant and real. And today because it strikes me like a lot of brands are also IP owners and active sellers.
Yeah, so that's something that's really interesting to me because I started on the brand side and, 15 years ago when Amazon really was just kind of even beta testing the FBA program. And so it was very new, and you saw this curve of all of the brands going to Amazon and getting on Dropship Central and working with Amazon. So you're really selling to Amazon, but it's never going to Amazon. It's going directly to the consumer. And then working with Amazon was crushing their margins, and it was a lot more work. And so then they went to third-party sellers and offered their products to third-party sellers for those third-party sellers to represent the brand. And then suddenly you've got 16 third-party sellers on your listing. And so you've got to claw that back, and it's really hard to do. So then brands shut it down again and went and sold directly to Amazon because Vendor Central was starting to take off. And so there's been this whole, you can see these waves of where different brands try different methods, and everybody kind of jumps on that wave and rides it for a little bit and then changes. And so now we're in that phase where and this seems to probably be a final phase where brand owners are back to selling directly to the consumers through Seller Central, and being the brand, the IP owner, the seller, everything all in one.
Yeah, which obviously does remove those conflicts, right, when you're trying to enforce contracts or enforce your IP. But that's why I work a lot with agencies, and I feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? You're, whether you want to or not, you're in the brand protection business because it's It's just so relevant to what you do and it's critical for your success, but you're not the IP owner. So it's a little bit challenging, right? You're being squeezed, especially if you're trying to run marketing and you're not winning the buy box, and the clients want to know why.
Yeah, it's right. And to me, it's crazy because, like I said, I've seen this wave of things go from one version to the other, or one style of selling to the other. And so now we're in this place where it's less common than it used to be to have so many sellers and be losing the buy box, but it still happens. And so I'm always surprised when a seller is surprised by somebody else showing up on their listing. And it still happens on a daily basis where I hear, someone comes with this question. It is probably the most common question I get. It's why I'm losing the buy box, or, why are these other sellers on here, and how I can get rid of them, as if it's a completely novel idea. Like, this is the first time it's happened to anyone. And, not to like minimize anyone's concern, because it's a very real concern, but it just blows my mind that brands don't go into this process of selling direct on Amazon with that thought in their mind that this is something that could happen, and understanding their options and the paths for resolving that. It's until it happens, it's a non-issue. And then suddenly, oh, I didn't know this could happen, and now I don't know how to fix it. And then, that's where we come into play, and hopefully we can be the ones to help with it. But yeah, that's, the fact that it is happening less, but it's still a very prevalent problem. And so people are constantly still surprised by it.
Yeah.
It's me every day.
And the more popular your products are, the more this is an issue. And again, unless you're gated, or you've managed to stitch together, like I work with a bunch of brands that are very aggressive with transparency and really using all the programs, and they still lose buy box. They still lose it, but they probably lose it 90% less than a brand that isn't working those programs aggressively. So I think your point is, like, you never stop it, and you shouldn't be shocked when it happens, but it's about, setting yourself up so you can have some control over it, and then react to it like when it happens. The other thing is rogue ASINs and duplicates. We see that all the time. And to me, those are great candidates for IP violations, because we don't have a vested interest, right? Typically in the success of what's happening there. But most of the brand owners don't even know about them.
Exactly. Right. Which is
so they're hard to find on Amazon. Yeah. They make buying so easy that it's almost like this stuff's invisible.
Yeah. Unless you're specifically searching for your brand, constantly and combing for things. And then if they're not using your brand, but they're using everything else, they've taken your copy or your images, and they're just putting it out there as if it's a generic product, but with all of your same stuff, and bidding on all the same things, and advertising on your ASINs, and, taking over your sales in that way. So you're losing the buy box, but not in the traditional way where you've still got it on your own listing. You're just losing it because really your sales are going to another listing entirely.
You already know your success relies on your Amazon sales growth, and that means beating counterfeiters and illicit sellers to the buy box. But do you have all the tools you need to do so effectively? IP Secure offers seller intelligence to understand and root out unauthorized sellers and push them out of the buy box through simple enforcement actions that actually work, meaning customers will only see your legitimate products and shop from your authorized sellers. Learn how at ipsecure.com.
I think of it like a retail store, and like it's my store. And in example one, I literally take a nap, and someone comes in and is standing behind the counter, and all of a sudden they're collecting all the revenue that comes into my store. But then in the second example, it's like someone comes and opens up a store right next to yours and is sort of laughing at you as they're selling the same product at 10% less. But their store looks a little bit more shitty than mine. I don't know what's up with that. So there's that dynamic, because usually I agree with your point in terms of them stealing the content and the imagery and things like that. But what we see much more common, if they do that, they get spotted. So there's, I think, the crafty ones that we see, like the overseas ones, like they said, like they'll literally avoid using trademark terms in the title. right? They'll find a different image, but the reality is it's the same product. They know how to get through Amazon's checks when they're creating those listings. And those are a real problem, right, for a lot of the brands, because there just isn't an easy way to find them. You really have to kind of crawl through, the bowels of Amazon.
And then if they're not using your trademark terms and they're not using your brand name, then, it's harder to go after them with IP concerns, because then really your only option is if you have like a patent that you can go after and say, okay, I know they're not saying they're my brand. They're not saying it is this product name. They're not using any of my copyrights, but it is my product just without my brand name on it.
And you're forced to do a buy.
Right. To even be able to prove that.
Because the product, the image could be anything. So the reality is you got to buy it, right? And inspect it. And then you realize you're not doing transparency and you don't have track and trace, so it's like, again, all these things are connected. I wanted to ask you, Jessica, about, because it happened recently, Amazon had their, Accelerate event, for sellers, and it's exciting. And I know a lot of brands and Amazon sellers are very consumed by this, during the event, because so much information is shared. In the context of brand protection, were there anything that you felt like was shared that changes the game or is relevant, for folks that are dealing with like compliance and brand protection type issues?
Yeah, I think, to me, there were two things that stood out. The one that I think everyone's talking about and is most excited about is one that's been kind of a passion of mine for about a year and a half. So I was really excited to see it finally get some attention, is the customer engagement or manage your customer engagement tool. So that tool has been around, but what they announced at this Accelerate is that you're going to have some additional options in what customers you can reach out to. So currently with customer engagement, for most sellers, you can only reach out to followers, brand followers. So you have to be opted into all these other programs and then doing things to get the followers to even be able to use customer engagement. So at Accelerate, they did announce that brands are going to be able to reach out to a bunch of new segments of customers, including biggest spenders and repeat purchasers. And so that's very exciting from a brand protection or brand promotion perspective, to have even more opportunity and have these, again, free. Amazon doesn't give us much for free, but these are free tools from Amazon to be able to reach out directly to the customer, still within Amazon's templates, still not direct emails. You don't know who you're emailing. You can't just necessarily freeform type everything. There's templates and subject lines you can choose, but it's a huge deal. As limiting as all of that sounds, it is a huge deal for brands. It's still not available to everyone, though. So there's a lot of excitement around it, but I don't think everyone realizes that it is still in beta. So only sellers who meet certain criteria, and that would be sellers who have been actively using the tool up until this point and have amassed a number of email campaigns and successful email campaigns that haven't had a bunch of opt-outs. Those are the only sellers who have access right now. So it is supposed to roll out to everyone by the end of the year, but right now it's still in beta. So all these things that people are excited about, I don't think Amazon did a really great job at Accelerate of making it clear that those tools are not available right now to everyone to start just emailing their customers today.
Well, lucky for your clients, Seller Labs, that you were there and it. And it's, again, another reason why you need to work with an agency that's really living this stuff every day, right? So you can keep track of all these new tools, because that sounds like a really cool thing. And I think there's always been like this invisible divide between the customer, right, and the brand, and anything that allows you to connect more directly with them, I think, is probably a pretty good thing.
Yeah, and these, the templates you can use, or the subjects are, kind of like seasonal promotions or new item launches. So, like I said, they're still kind of limiting, but it's the kinds of things you do want to communicate as a brand, or the way to kind of build and protect your brand on Amazon, so that you're building that brand loyalty and making sure that your customers are recognizing that they purchase from an actual brand. Because, on Amazon, that's not always the case. It's not always a brand. You might just be purchasing some throwaway thing that that seller's going to be gone in a month. So you always want to be able to connect and kind of establish that you are a brand and you can be trusted and you do have longevity, so that those customers keep coming back to you.
And it also is interesting, and I can see why Amazon would be taking a methodical, slow approach to rolling out these tools. Because again, not all sellers are good guys. And we don't want, like, it's bad enough that they're here, right? Taking our revenue and taking our buy box. Could you imagine if they were able to get their hands on tools like this? And now they could start communicating with customers. As a brand owner, that's very scary.
Yeah.
I think
it is. Yeah.
You already don't know who's selling your product. Now you won't even know who's emailing them either.
And representing themselves as you don't know like what they're putting in those emails. Yeah.
So I think Amazon's going to take a real methodical approach of trying to make sure that they do this the right way, because I'm sure they've obviously thought about those various risks. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was the seller health, and I know there's been enhancements made to that dashboard, and some have written online about even additional kind of clarity around how it works exactly, right, with points and activities. What are your thoughts on that? Is that like a game-changing thing? What's that about?
Yeah, I do think it's game-changing, and I think probably in more ways than people realize or are anticipating. So from the seller side, I think it can be a very positive thing. Sellers have been asking for years for more clarity on what, you've just got this scale for a long time that's, from red to green, and you fall somewhere on that scale, healthy or not. You don't know really what goes into that and how healthy you really are, or how much one type of infraction can really take you down a peg. So that's what all these enhancements are meant to do. They're taking it from just a color scale to giving you a numbered scale so you know where you really stand, and telling you better how each type of infraction counts against that, how those are weighted, and then giving you direct access now to account health specific reps, so that if you have a problem and you're trying to resolve it, you can call in and get answers specific to account health. So it's a lot of positive things for sellers. My one thought, I wouldn't necessarily call it a concern, but just anytime Amazon is streamlining something, I feel like it's for a reason. And I feel like it's probably because once they know they've given sellers the tools. So a big complaint now amongst sellers is always they get in trouble for something and they say they didn't break a rule. And they truly believe they didn't break a rule because they didn't understand the rule, because there's so many rules. So it's so common that sellers think they haven't done anything wrong because they can't find the help page that tells them that they have. And so I think by Amazon giving that clarity, it opens up the door for Amazon to be more strict and to enforce more rules. And so I think that that's one thing that we'll probably see come out of these account health and enhancements, is just that Amazon's now going to be able to enforce more because they know they have the tools there for the sellers to understand what's being enforced.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I completely agree. It's about years ago, I worked for a boss, and he would always, one of his favorite sayings was, expect what you inspect. And what he meant by that was, if you have clear direction, then you should have a predictable result. And I think that's what Amazon is saying. I completely agree with you that they really can't turn the screws on these things if they don't feel confident, like people have access to the information and the education process is robust. And I don't think they probably expect everyone to know it, but you need it to be pretty widely understood. I totally agree with you. And I read after this came out, I went into Seller Central and I checked out like the new language and the stuff that they, the policy, right, that they published it. They published a whole piece on how they changed it and why they changed it. And it was a lot of what you just said, clarity, right? We want you to know how you stack up. If you get an IP violation filed against you, we want you to know what that means, and how it will impact, right, your business on Amazon. They mentioned something that I thought was really interesting, which is that they insinuate that there may be a limit to certain types of infractions. They don't say unequivocally that there is a limit. They sort of insinuate that there might be a limit. And if they did have a limit, it would be 5.
Right.
They actually use the word 5 in the T's and C's. And for a brand protection nerd like myself, I picked right up on that. I thought that's really crazy. I mean, not crazy, excuse me. That's amazing, because it's the most sort of overt thing I've ever seen from them in terms of, what's the end? How many does it take? Right?
Before you just shut me down. Yeah.
before that rogue seller from overseas is completely nuked. How many times do I have to report the same guy? Right? Is what a lot of brands are thinking. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is that a legit limit? Is that real? Do you think that's them? Are they hedging so that like they can, like, what do you think?
I think if there was a very specific limit, they would come right out and say it. But I think by putting something in there, it gives them something that they can enforce if they need to. I think they're probably just waiting to kind of see how these new features roll out and how that changes, how sellers are interacting with it and how they're interacting with support and how they're actually resolving these issues. And then, maybe they'll become more clear. I think probably what you said specifically of brands thinking, okay, now I only need five times to report this guy is probably coming into their thought process of, if we specifically say how many it is, then we are going to have sellers who are going to target other sellers, both good players and bad, who are going to go after. So that I think that's probably a reason they've always been somewhat vague in that, is if we tell people exactly what it is, then we're going to have people specifically reporting and specifically trying to take down other sellers, either sellers they think are infringing or just competitors that they want to take down.
Yeah. And that's a little bit scary, because that just screams abuse, or potential abuse, I should say. I mean, thought about from the brand owner's perspective, from a legal perspective, it's very significant. And I agree. I'm sure many of them are sitting around and thinking, should we just basically go around and hit everybody 5 times in the hope that they'll permanently disappear? So it's interesting. I agree. I think they want people to know that there is a limit, but they reserve the right to toggle that limit depending on, what the infractions are. And I'm sure the situation at hand. Having a black and white rule would just invite, people to kind of try to game the system.
Well, and it's like the buy box in general, right? We're like, they won't tell you exactly what it takes to have it or why you've lost it, no matter what. They don't reveal that because, like you just said, it gives them that ability to toggle it as needed for the specific situation. So, yeah, I'm not sure that we'll ever get specific clarity on a lot of these rules, just because it leaves the door open for Amazon to do what they think they need to do in a situation.
They do know what they're doing. They've made, buying products online so easy that it's funny because like I used to be a fan of shopping physically in stores, back in the day, because I just liked touching stuff. And my wife was always the same way. And now I think last Christmas, we didn't ever left the house. I mean, I literally, like, every holiday gift you buy someone now, you don't leave the house. And that's a testament to how easy Amazon makes it. They just make it so easy. But that means that brand owners and agencies really need to think and understand how Amazon's technology works, because it's very different than the other platforms that they're familiar. It's very different than policing social media and all these other places. And on top of that, it's almost half of every dollar spent in the United States online. It is crazy. I met with a big brand recently that said to me that, well, we don't sell on Amazon. And I thought, that's an amazing thing to say. Because really what they meant was they're not benefiting directly from the sale of their products on Amazon, because their products are there, right? Whether you want them there or not, they're there. And your customers are going there as a search engine to comparison shop, to do their research. And so even if they don't make the buy there, they're looking for you there, and you got to pay attention to it.
Right. And if by chance someone's not selling your product there yet, you're a newer brand and you refuse to be on the Amazon platform, but no one else is selling your product on the Amazon platform yet, then you're really missing out. Because if someone does go there to do that research or do that comparison shopping and you don't show up, then you may miss out on that sale, or you may just, that may hurt your brand image because they may think, oh, this isn't a legit brand. I saw them online somewhere, but they're not even on Amazon. So they must not be a real brand. And then they'll move on to somewhere else, So you kind of just have to be there, whether you're doing it directly or, you're trusting someone else to do it, or it's just happening because you're not paying attention to it. You really kind of just need to be there.
That's a great point. You got to be there. And so if you don't own your presence, right, if you don't have a store and you're not controlling the content, well, then you're basically allowing anybody who wants to do it. Because the consumer doesn't understand that difference between, the content that the brand owner and their agency control, and again, some rogue seller who decides I'm going to just sort of build all these listings and this content. It's really incredible, actually.
The consumer still doesn't understand that Amazon is a marketplace and they're not buying everything from Amazon directly.
Right. Yeah.
I know. So
as long as it's FBA, and now even if you're merchant fulfilled, you're probably using Amazon boxes, right? So it's like you don't even know. You don't know. They don't know. I tell my wife that all the time. I remember this, like last Christmas is coming up again. That's why it's on my mind. But last Christmas, she told me she bought like one of these like nutcracker things where it's like it's a nutcracker guy and he's standing up. Yeah, he's got a little drum, and in the photo on the listing, and even in the content, they make it seem as if it's like, I don't know, 18 inches high. And when she got it, it was like that big. It was the funniest thing that I had ever seen. And it was like literally the size of a G.I. Joe. Like, and she was so mad. And I said, like, this is why you really have to know who you're buying it from. And, like I said, expect what you inspect. And if you just click buy, you may get the best price, but you may not get what you think.
Right. You're not getting what you think you're getting at all.
Yeah. What do you think about what they're calling Prime Day 2?
I am not a fan. I refuse
You're
to
not
call
a fan.
As a matter of fact, I refuse to call it Prime Day 2. I keep
Why is
insisting. I don't know. I just think it's not necessary. I think Prime Day has already lost the real boost that people used to see from it. There are, Amazon sees a big boost as a whole. There are some big brands that see a big boost. Everyone else is going to get, a minor lift probably, but it probably nets out because they lose sales before and after because people are waiting for that event. So I think that one Prime Day is plenty. And I do think that this year, Amazon's kind of anticipating the recession. I think that they're anticipating all of these concerns that are still lingering about supply chain and whether people are going to have the money, whether the products are going to be there. And so they're just trying to get a jump on, have people come shop in October, get a lot of the stuff out of the way. That way, if things do happen later, we won't see as much of a hit from it because Q4 for us is still going to be a good Q4 because we got a bunch in October.
I think that's a great point. Like, I think they view the economy as this ticking time bomb. And the sooner they can get you to open the wallet and start the holiday shopping, the more they mitigate that risk, right, to their business. Because it's a turbulent world and it just takes one significant geopolitical event, right? And all of a sudden, everyone's purchasing habits have changed, overnight. And I think that's a real risk for them. Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. And it's interesting that it's only for Prime members. I thought that's interesting.
So right. So and that's where the Prime ties it again, and why it's kind of another Prime Day because it is exclusive to Prime customers. But yeah, if they're really trying, I guess that entices people to sign up for Prime if you want to get that. You want to get the deals on the Christmas stuff before everyone else does, sign up for Amazon Prime, pay that membership fee, and then they're getting that many more members before the end of the year too.
Yeah, we're doing a research paper now at my day at IP Secure, or my day job, and it's about loyalty. And we think this event is less about traditional Prime Day type metrics. It's about creating more value for Prime members, because I think there is an absolute battle underway. And that battle between Amazon and Walmart, and one of the fronts of the battle is loyalty. And I think they're going to extend these programs as far out beyond the platforms as they possibly can. Healthcare, fuel, right? They're already doing it with digital content, right? TV and stuff and movies. So it's like being a Prime member will be in the future about so much more than just free shipping. It's like you're going to be getting like dozens of different services and consuming different things because you're a Prime member. And I see Walmart doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, they just did something the other day. I can't remember what it was now. I got an email or I saw a commercial for something that was a perk now of being a member of, what is it, Walmart Plus?
Well, yeah, Walmart Plus. Yep. Well, now, I mean, there's a reason that they're putting in optometry clinics and healthcare clinics inside their physical stores. Because once you join their program, now they've got you getting your eyeglasses there. They got you getting a health checkup or a flu shot. You know, Costco's got gas. How long do you think it will be before Amazon buys, gas stations? I'll tell you, it's coming. And they want Prime to be connected to as many important places in your life where you make purchases. So it's a really interesting strategy. And yeah, very cool. Very cool. So we're almost out of time, but before we go, I'm wondering if there's anything you want to leave our viewers with in terms of unique elements of the service or things that you really do well.
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes us unique, one of the things you already said, is that Seller Labs is a company founded by sellers for sellers. So, we know what you're going through, and we have all of this expertise and experience to help you with what you're doing. But what makes us different as well is, even though we are a technology-based company, we were founded as technology first, and we offer software. Our services team is very hands-on. So if you come work with us for PPC advertising, you have 3 actual humans who are working your account for you. An actual human behind the scenes that is, working on bid adjustments and changing things in your actual day-to-day marketing. You have another one who is doing the strategy, and, a third who is your regular day-to-day contact who's having those meetings with you. We do meet with you every other week. So you're getting personal attention and personalized attention to your campaigns, which is so different, I think, than a lot of providers that is, fully automated. We use automation. It's a combination of humans and automation, I think, that gives us the best combination of, oversight on the account to make sure that you're getting the best results that you can.
Right. That makes sense. So if we have listeners who want to reach you specifically or Seller Labs, is the best way to go to your website? Is there another way that you might suggest that they could reach out to you if they wanted to?
No, I mean, I think the website's the best way. That will let you kind of choose the level of service you're interested in and get routed to the right team. Everyone's welcome to, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from your listeners and hear, it's always helpful to me to speak to people who are doing this and stay relevant. That's why Seller Labs is so good, talking to the sellers and understanding the actual problems and concerns they're having. But if you're interested in joining Seller Labs as a client, through our website, finding because we offer, service from completely hands-off, use our software, to completely hands-on. We manage your day-to-day Amazon business on the platform. So being able to go to the website, kind of seeing what all those offers are and choosing to contact us through the right offer, so you're getting routed to the team that's best capable of handling your specific needs.
Jessica, Seller Labs is lucky to have you. I think brand protection is important, and clearly you know what you're doing. Clearly Seller Labs thinks it's important and has a lot of focus on helping your clients maintain that channel integrity. So kudos to you guys. And I would encourage anybody who's got interest to reach out to Seller Labs or to Jessica directly. Thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
You've been listening to Owning the Buy Box, a show from IP Secure. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share episodes that you love. That helps us keep delivering you the tools you need to sharpen your competitive edge and ensure your authorized sellers always own the buy box. We'll see you next time.